this program. And sitting next to me is
Nadine Grunberg. I'm a former student of the program and I come from Bulgaria.
And we are your hosts for today. If during this webinar you have any question, please type it in the chat box below. And we have two lovely colleagues, Vera Rademacher and Hanneke Lenders, who will be monitoring the chat, and they will try to answer all your questions. And it's maybe good to know that at the end of this webinar, there will be a Q&A session. So if you have any specific questions, either for me or Nadine, you can also put them in the chat box, and we will try to discuss them as good as we can. So I suggest that we start by telling you something about our program.
Yes, so it's a one-year program, so you will get 60 European credits. It's English taught. The cohorts are made up of approximately 15 to 20 students. My cohort was 17. It's a very diverse community. We had students from India, Finland, Greece, and it's also a very good option for part-time practitioners since it's a good complement to from theory and practice.
Yeah, actually we see a lot of practitioners who decide after a professional career to join our program, and there is room for that. We can accommodate that. So let's have a look at what the program looks like more in detail, I suggest.
Yes, so this program specifically focuses on contemporary theater and dance, and also dramaturgy. It's very special because of its focus on state-of-the-art practices, but also the newest developments of the field. It doesn't necessarily focus, though, on history of theater, but it has a lot to do with the interdisciplinarity between the fields.
Yeah, I think it's very important that Nadine points that out, because we often see that people expect a bit more traditional theater forms, and it's good to know that in our program, indeed, we don't focus that much on the more mainstream theater, also not that much on repertoire theater, but indeed on the latest developments in the field. And you also see the word dramaturgy, which is one of the key topics in our program. With dramaturgy, we mean that we reflect on the relationship between, on the one hand, the composition of the performance, or the dance performance, or the theater performance, and how that designs a specific relationship with the audience. So we don't only look at the performance itself, but we also try to study how does that invite a spectator or an audience to relate to that work. And next to that, dramaturgy also means that we look at those performances in a broader context. The performance also actually exists in a world. So there is a political context, a social context, a cultural context. If we have a look at the program on a very detailed level, it's good to know that our program consists of 4 study periods. We also call them blocks. And in the first 2 blocks of your MA year, you will take a series of mandatory courses, so courses that everybody has to take, and 2 elective courses. And we're going to talk you briefly through these courses. I'll explain in a more general way what these courses are about, and Nadine can help me out by giving more concrete examples. So in study period 1 and 2, block 1 and 2, you will take courses that teach you the most important theoretical and conceptual frameworks in theater and dance studies. Next to that, you will have a course mapping the field, which focuses on current developments in the field. And then there will be a research lab throughout block 1 and 2, which will help you to gradually develop your ideas for your own thesis later on in the year. What were your experiences with these courses? Is there something you can tell about the things that you did in those courses? Or?
Yes, so in theory and concepts, well, as the title says, we basically were introduced to the main theories and concepts of the field. So it was a lot of literature. And yes, we presented a lot of literature in presentations to the class, but we also did interesting debates in which we divided the class into 2 groups, and we debated around different argumentations on theatrical concepts. In mapping the field, there was a lot of theater going. We saw a lot of interesting performances, and there was also literature resumes in the sense that they always resonated what we saw in the performances. So it teaches you in a way to how to use concepts to analyze and look at a performative tool.
Yeah, visiting performances indeed is a very important part of our program. I mean, of course, when you decide to enroll in this program, you love theater and dance, but make sure to be prepared to visit a lot of different performances in 1 year.
Yes, and in that sense, the performances are also have no language barrier. So because many of us are international students and do not speak Dutch, this is not an issue. And for the research lab, yes, I think this is the time where we all reflect on our interests and start researching literature a bit broadly at first, and then much more selectively afterwards, in order to start building up a theoretical framework around what we would like to research for our thesis.
Yeah, and also part of this research lab is that we introduced you to a series of methodological approaches. So getting an idea of different ways how you can do research in the field of theater and dance. And indeed, it's all meant to gradually help you to work towards your own thesis. Then there are also elective courses. These are courses you can select. And we have different ones on offer. I would like to point out two. Expanded performance. I think that's a course you took, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, I did. Yeah, you had a lot to do of seeing how theater can be a tool of analysis or a lens to see or research in other fields. So we saw examples with, I think, social robots, sorry. And this was a nice opportunity because we could also write a research proposal, which we actually presented to the Expertise Center here in Utrecht. So it was a very interesting project.
Yeah, and I think it's also very typical for our program to see how theater and dance, not only as a cultural and artistic practice, but also as a kind of thinking model, can be helpful in other fields of society. So it has very much to do with how concepts and ideas from theater can be helpful outside the theater. For example, indeed, in robotics, but also in social sciences, there was a very interesting project that had to do with what dance can do for people with Parkinson's disease. So all these kinds of crossing the boundaries, and I think crossing the boundaries is very typical for what we do in our program. And then there's another elective course called Dramaturgical Practices, Theater and Dance. And you can either choose to focus on dramaturgy in theater or in dance. And this is a course that really focuses on dramaturgical skills that you need when you want to become a dramaturg who is active in artistic processes and reflects on artistic processes. So it's a bit more of a hands-on course. And then if your interests even go into another direction, you can also opt to choose courses from other MA programs, such as gender studies, for example. I think this is enough for period 1 and 2, right? Yeah, study period 3 and 4, that's very different from the first half of your year when you're studying here. In the first half year, it's really packed with courses. And then in the second year, in a way, it's up to what you want. So this is the time of the year where you are, on the one hand, writing your MA thesis, and on the other hand, you're doing an internship. So doing an internship is mandatory, meaning that you will be active somewhere in the professional field for a couple of months. Maybe you can tell a little bit what your thesis trajectory and your internship look like.
Yes, so for the internship, I think, so first of all, I want to mention that the thesis and the internship could echo each other or go along together, so they don't need to be separate. In my case, they were. But for the internship, there are also a lot of opportunities that get presented here in the university with the career services, I think. Many providers come and yes, you can choose an internship that way, or you can also do your research, which I think is yes, also your responsibility in a way in order to find what you really like and what you would really like to do. In my case, I did apply in a place that was not searching for interns, so you might keep that in mind. It's also a possibility. So yes, the internship took a couple of months. For me, it required to write a research proposal, and it was, in a sense, research itself. I had to do interviews and write a report in the end. I think that's the requirement.
And I think the most important maybe to stress out at this point is that there is a lot of freedom to create the kind of research and internship that you want. So it's not that we have all kinds of internships that are already there and you just do one of them. It really is a period in which you think about what it is you want, what you want for yourself in the professional future, and that you try to come up with a research plan and an internship plan that helps you to get there. And this all sounds a bit like you're completely out on your own in this part of the year, but that's not really true. Can you tell maybe a little bit about how supervision goes in this period of the year?
Yes, it's the same with thesis and with the internship. You always have a assigned supervisor who is there to supervise your process. You can always turn to them for questions, and if something is not going as you wish it to go, then that can also be arranged. With the thesis, the supervision can be on the content or on the format of the thesis. You can get help with the ideas, with the literature, with and this is all over frequently in the third and fourth block. Yeah.
Yeah, and also in this period we organize group meetings, because you have to imagine that all our students are all over the place. Some are doing internships abroad, and people are working on their thesis in their own home, in their own room. So they don't see each other that often anymore compared to block 1 and 2. So that's why we organize group meetings, so that the group can come together and also exchange experiences and sometimes also challenges and problems while working on their thesis. I think that's it for this part. So why studying in Utrecht? Well, there are many reasons why you should. Maybe not the most important one, but we have a lovely historical city, not too big, so it's very easy to find your way around and also very easy to get to know new people. When we're looking at the educational system, Utrecht is well known for its focus on tailor-made education. We work with small groups of people, and we have a lot of classes in the form of working groups, meaning that you're not with hundreds of people in a lecture hall listening to a professor who gives a lecture, but working in very small groups, actively working on the content. So it's a lot of active working forms also, and we have a lot of teachers who have great expertise in devising and designing such courses. Also, we have an international educational climate. Nadine already told, with students coming all over from the world. That's also why we have an English taught program. But it might be good to emphasize that we approach English as a way to communicate with each other. So also when English is not your native tongue, it really is meant as a way to express yourself, and it's not about becoming fluent in English. And we're always ready to help out each other when we can't find the right words. What's also interesting about Utrecht as a city when you're here for theater and dance is that we have a lot of interesting festivals, art festivals going on. So we have our own theater festival that's called Spring Festival, which shows a lot of contemporary theater and dance and performance. So it's really the place to go for our students. But there's also an animation festival, a film festival, a youth theater festival. We have a big theater hall showing more mainstream theater. We have smaller venues with different kinds of genres. So really there's a lot to choose from. And also we're only 20 minutes away from Amsterdam. And I mean, what is a 20-minute train drive? That's nothing. And in Amsterdam, I mean, it's just also a Walhalla of festivals, theaters, activities, and so on. So yes, when you come to Utrecht, you are in the right cultural climate, so to say.
Yes, so a bit about my experience in the program. Yes, as an idea of how a normal week would be in this program, I think we had 2 or 3 classes per week. And since a lot of the assignments were group assignments, we often would end up in the library in a group discussing literature and trying to write together, which was also one of the very interesting skills I learned in this program, which was peer reviewing. As many of the activities we have is writing an essay, but also then peer reviewing with a colleague. So then it was a very interesting reflection on where you are with the material, but also how can you help somebody else and adjusting in that sense. Yes, I also had challenges which were related with the thesis. For me, this was like the big difficulty of the program, but I assure you
for most students.
Yes, but I assure you that even though it is an intense program, as Sigrid said in the first 2 blocks, it's very intense, also literature-wise. I think that in all the different courses, we do learn skills that then all unite themselves in how we need to approach the thesis. So in that sense, with the supervision and with the thesis plan, which is something we also work on in the research lab, it forms a sort of backbone on which you can always rely, plus the supervision during this maybe scary period at first.
Yeah, you also stressed that writing is an important part of the program. I think that's indeed good for you to know that most of the assignments, next to being group assignments, they're also writing assignments. So there are not that many presentations going on, for example, also no tests or exams. It's all written work, so you will be writing a lot of papers. And training you to become an academic writer is one of the key aims of our program, because being a good writer academically also helps you when you want to function in the art fields, where also a lot of writing needs to be done, and people are needed who know how to do that.
Yes, and in that sense, I really enjoyed the dramaturgy course writing dance, in which we really explored different way of writing about dance. So this was very, very interesting in the sense that it creates this mirror between what writing is and who we are as writers. So this was very in-depth writing exercise in its own. And I just want to mention a main idea, a reason why I chose the program was, yes, the theoretical input, which is very important, I think, and yes, the core of the program in the end, but also the teaching staff, and also I think the class dynamics, because this is not at all the sort of yes, silent class taking notes and
no,
no, not at all. And then the professor, the knowledge holder who only talks. It's much more an exchange, a continuous, fluctuating process in which I think I was very, very happy with seeing that teachers consider in a way each student as an expert of its own. And in that sense, there is a lot going on in exchange with the professors, who are also most of them practitioners, I think, which also gives another angle on how one can interact with them.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like where there's not a kind of hierarchy between students and teachers. Of course, there's a difference between the two of them, but yes, we're like equal peers talking about the same kind of topics that we're interested in. So yeah, I completely agree. So to look a bit further, when you finish this program, the idea is that you have obtained certain skills that of course are valuable in the professional, in the professional field of the arts. I already mentioned writing, that this is one of the main skills you will be trained in. Another one is observing artistic processes, observing artworks, and being able to reflect on them in a structural and systematic way. And this is very important because in the future, in the field, you need to be able to give feedback to people on what's going on in an artistic process, what a certain performance or dance performance is doing to the audience, and you have to know the words to somehow express that. So being able to give feedback based on a close observation of the work is also one of the very important skills that we will train you in. And then there are, of course, communication skills and group skills, in the sense that the field of arts is a field where people collaborate with each other. So you have to know how to work with each other and to communicate with each other. In terms of career perspectives, you see a list up there. I can imagine that most of the things that are on there do ring a bell for you. Maybe just briefly to pick out this idea of dramaturg, since it can be something very different in different cultural contexts. The dramaturg, and how we approach it here, is someone who is closely involved in the artistic process, but takes a more reflexive position. So it's not the one who is necessarily making the work, but who is participating in the work, collaborating in the work, and is able to all the time be reflexive about what choices are being made and what the impact of those choices is. And if you have more questions about the career perspectives that are on here, you can put them in the chat box. So practical stuff, entry requirements, what do you need to do, or when are you eligible for our program? First of all, you need to have a bachelor degree, and you have to be able to demonstrate that you have 30 credits in the field of our program, so related to theater, dance, performance. And we also need you to show that you have research experience, in the sense that you have written a bachelor thesis before, for example. And then we need a motivation letter, and this is very important because it's important for you and for us to know that this is really the place for you. And mainly what we're looking for, if we're talking about the DNA of our future students, is students who are very open-minded, who have a very broad interest, who dare to look beyond boundaries, who are curious to learn more about theater and dance, also types of theater and dance that they're maybe not familiar with, and also who are not afraid to bring their own personality. I mean, Nadine was already telling you about that we have a very lively group where people participate in discussions. So yes, we are looking for people who dare to speak out, who are not afraid to say what they think and to share their questions with us. We are not so much interested in answers. We hope you bring interesting questions.
Yeah.
Is there something I need to add?
Well, I wanted actually to add my tips.
Yes, add your tips.
Well, they were related also with the DNA of the perfect student, so to speak. It was more, yes, curiosity and motivation, I think, are the core of, yes, really taking advantage of what is here. And also bring on your new initiatives, because I think the environment is very open to new things, questions, of course, and many more. And maybe lastly, really take advantage of your peers, because we had such a diverse group. It is intense. It is a lot of yes, essays and courses and so on. But I think what is there as common knowledge and as motivation and passion is really, yeah, a treasure that everybody needs to take advantage of.
Yeah, I completely agree. Some more practical information. Important to know, application deadlines. There are two different deadlines, as you can see, for non-EU students and for EU students. And there are also some interesting scholarships that you see on the slide, including the deadline. So if that's maybe something for you, note the date and you'll know how to apply for that. Yeah, and then we already are at the point where we are ready for your questions. Hopefully we already answered some of the questions by giving this webinar, but we can imagine that there are some questions. So we're going to look in the chat box to see what these questions are. And I get a tip from our moderators. If we please want to point out to you that a rolling admission, and that has to do with the previous slide, means that you already can submit for this program right now. So there is a kind of end deadline, but that doesn't mean that you have to wait till then to register for this program. You can do that from now on, actually. So if you already made up your mind, don't hesitate and do so. Back to the questions. I mean, there are already some questions here. Shall we start with Nora's?
Yeah.
Hi, Nora. Your question is, what kind of previous education and knowledge does this program require? Connecting to this, how do I show that I have 15 EC research expertise? Well, I think we already said something about previous education. When we look at our students, where they come from, we see two different types of students, three actually. Either we have students who already did a bachelor in a kind of theater studies program or dance studies program, and they now decide to do their master with us. We also sometimes have practitioners who completed another level of education and do a pre-master program to gain academic knowledge and skills and then enter our MA program. And we have students who come from a field that is not close to the theater at all, but they do have lots of experience with doing research, but research in another field. And for those students, we often come up, for example, with a reading list to somehow make up for the lack of knowledge about theater and dance. But there's still a possibility then to join our program. So let's say you don't have a background in theater and dance, but you do have a finished bachelor degree and you are interested in theater and dance, you can still seriously consider to join our program if you're really motivated. Can you do the next one? Yes. By Emma?
Emma. Hi, Emma. Are there any examples of internships or alumni who have practiced the taught information in a crossover way? Mm-hmm. How is the dramaturgy, for example, used?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by crossover way. But if you mean by that, if our students who do internships are also sometimes beyond the boundary of the theater, yes, that is the case. So we do have students who do internships like really with a theater company or with a dance company or a theater festival. But I also know, for example, of a student who did her internship with the police, strangely enough. Yes, because the police was interested in the performance of safety. How can safety be performed? And performance, of course, is something that we know things about as theater scholars and performance scholars. So she used her expertise as a theater scholar, as a beginning theater scholar, to assist the police in thinking about safety and how to organize safety. So yes, we see a lot of different internship places, and some are really in the field of theater, and some are really outside of it.
Yeah, maybe in the sense that dramaturgy could be used in your example, it is how to maybe present or situate or yeah, with the city, because sorry, there was another colleague of ours who did performing in the city, and I think it also has to do with how you apply the dramaturgy skills. Or if you're in a company, dance company, or theater company, you can assist the dramaturg in the way you make the dramaturgy. So you're actively in the process of learning, but also giving feedback and ideas.
Yeah. We also see some questions, for example, by Susanna, but also some others, asking if there are any practical courses in our program. Well, let's be clear about that. No, no, there are no practical courses. So this is a theoretical program. So we're not doing dance or doing acting classes. It's also something that is not part of the Dutch system. So whereas in other contexts, for example, Anglo-Saxon context, it's very common to have theory and practice together. Here it's separated. So yes, it's important to know this is a completely theoretically taught program. I see another question about a difference between our master and the master dramaturgy at the University of Amsterdam. You're not familiar with that program, no? Yeah, so it's a question that I completely understand, because there is a 1.5-year MA program in Amsterdam, which is also called Dramaturgy. If I would have to compare the two MA programs, not in detail, but generally speaking, you could say that here in Utrecht, the focus is much more on contemporary theater and dance practices. Whereas in Amsterdam, for example, there is more attention also for mainstream theater, text-based theater. So we are a bit more on the experimental side. So it's good to remember that. And also there's a difference between, of course, a 1-year and a 1.5-year program. But if you read the websites of both master programs, I think it becomes quite clear what the differences are. But I would say that is the most important difference. Let's see what is left. Can you say something maybe to Heather about the schedule of our program and time commitment, and how you combine a private life and is there time for a private life, or is it only studying?
No, there is some time for private life. I mean, I meant it when I said it is intense, I think, because 3 classes of 2 hours, 3 hours per week, there's a lot of material, and I think it's endless how far you can question and discuss. Often enough, the classes were not enough. We would continue to discuss, and but in that sense, yes, in 1 week you would have 3 courses of 3 hours each, and then I would say also equally days in the library, because to really get acquainted with the material and then discuss with peers, I think it takes some time, but at the same time it's also very, very interesting. So yeah.
And we have a question from Ilaria. Ilaria, hi, you're in the chat room. You asked if it's possible to apply if you have a bachelor in visual art, filmmaking, and new media. Well, as we already said, yes, that definitely doesn't mean that there is not place for you in our program. You will, however, have to explain in your motivation letter why, after a bachelor in visual art and filmmaking, you now want to expand your knowledge and your experience in the field of theater and dance. But this is surely not a reason not to apply for our program, so you're more than welcome. This is always a difficult one. Job perspectives. I mean, you have just graduated, so you wouldn't know yet. But what is your idea about the job market in general?
Well, yes, I'm a very, very fresh graduate in that sense. But I think throughout the program, we did have some career services events in which we did work on our CV, not in the boring way, let's say, but more about what in our childhood and what strengths we think we are that we could instrumentalize into job perspectives. But I think, well, for me, my interests were more academic research. So I think I think there are many opportunities in the program to pursue research, and professors certainly give you ideas and perspectives how to pursue this in more specific ways.
Yeah, and maybe as a final remark before we wrap up, is that the truth is that the field of arts is a difficult field to find jobs in. That's a reality. But we also know that students who already start to build their network during the program and who are active, proactive, have so many more chances to find a job and to create their own jobs. So unfortunately, our time is up, so we have to wrap up. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. If you have any more questions, you can address them at the email address humanities@uu.nl. And we also want to tell you that there will be a recording of this webinar sent to you, included with a link to a survey. And we really appreciate if you fill in this survey, because every feedback that helps us to do this better the next time is really appreciated. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you in Utrecht.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.